Hello everyone, and welcome to WarsawJS number 84. Woo! We have a very special meetup today because there are many guests, not only from Warsaw and from Poland, but also from Berlin, also from Lithuania, from Vilnius exactly, right? And from New York. So we are very international today, that's why we speak in English. And what I wanted to say in the beginning is that the organizing team has prepared today's meetup, and besides me, it's Maciej Machniewski, Luisa Haas, and Gabriela Czucha. Big applause. Every time our meetup runs because it's supported by volunteers, so Ania Lukianowa, Konrad Dziekoński, Artur Kozubek, Jakub Strebejko. I wanted to say, are there any people who are first time at WarsawJS? Hands up, please. All right, there are several, even more. So I will explain that WarsawJS exists to support your growth in both professional and not only professional skills. That actually helps developers at every stage, even beginners, because we organize workshops for beginners, we organize workshops for intermediate developers, we help developers to develop their teaching skills, them as speakers also. So everyone can join us here and have their talk, a lightning talk. It's an open lineup in the end, and everyone can just apply, hey, I want to have a 5-minute lightning talk, and this means that you can also exercise to be a better speaker, and then, for example, participate in next WarsawJS, and then, for example, participate in our conference, Confront.js, which is going to happen in December. We have a mission statement. We also apply to the Berlin Code of Conduct. Thank you, Berlin, for coming. So why Berlin Code of Conduct? Because it's an international code of conduct which generally tells you, be respectful, please. If you cannot be respectful, you need to leave. That's our statement. The exact statements you can join there and see how exactly how it's good to behave well and how it's not, which behaviors are not appreciated. So, on meetup.com we have over 5,700 followers. If you follow us, you will know more about our next meetups. We also encourage you to visit our website warsawjs.com. And thanks to our sponsors, so 10 Clouds, CallStack, Fresha, PackHelp, PostGrick, Plisma, Sumo Logic, Tidio, and Xfang. Applause for them! Thanks to these sponsors, we have the big money for this room, and for the networking session we have catering, so it's all thanks to them, so we really appreciate your participation in creating this wonderful event. We also have a partner, that's JetBrains. In random occasions I will give out their license, 100% discount for a year license. If you are active here, you can get a license for that. We also have a Discord channel. You can join us there and have more interactions in the community. So the speakers for today: Andriy, Mykulyak. Andriy. Yeah. There's also Glafira here. I also saw Anton from Sumo Logic. There will be also Praveen, which is remotely today. And the last talk by Piotr Burdyło. Where is Piotr? Yeah, okay, so everyone is here. We have the full lineup. Thank you very much. So that's time to start. Oh, and wait, one moment. Who I said is going to be first today? Praveen. Okay, because Praveen is remotely, so it will be easy if we don't switch it later. So can we join Praveen to our channel? To our stack? How to make it now? I think I need to go here. Oh, actually, I need to change. I need to switch. Okay, moment. Hello?
Hey.
Praveen, can you hear me? Oops.
Yeah, I can.
Oh. You're here. Okay. Awesome. So the stage is yours, Praveen. Good luck. 25 minutes.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Hey, folks. Pretty exciting to join from Bangalore here. I'm from India. So today I'm going to talk about building GraphQL backends for databases and how do you consume on the client. Right. So a little bit of introduction about myself. I'm Praveen. I'm a senior developer advocate at Hasura, and full stack powered by Stack Overflow. So I started my journey from jQuery, then moved on to React, and so the JavaScript journey was on the front end was jQuery to React. On the backend side of things, it's around Django and Node.js is the path, right? And on the DevOps side, it's with Docker and Kubernetes and so on. So the reason I say that is because today, so I'm using like GraphQL for a bunch of things, both on the front end and the back end. So a lot of things have changed on the front end and the back end, but what's not changed too much has been the API layer, which typically we've used REST APIs fundamentally for data fetching and data inserts, right? So what does GraphQL offer for developers like me who work across the stack or who's primarily onto the front-end JavaScript ecosystem, right? So the primary reason for GraphQL is to let you build apps pretty quickly. We'll get to why that is so. But the goal of GraphQL is to solve the data access problem. You fundamentally have data sources being in different places, and hence you want to like have a single layer which just communicates with multiple pieces of sources of data, right? And also move towards like a self-serving API. With REST APIs, you will have a lot of communication between front-end and back-end teams, and the documentation around that is a little sketchy. With GraphQL, you have a schema and a type system, which lets you self-document the API and also try it out pretty quickly using the tooling that's available. And there are other benefits around using GraphQL, which include like the ability to actually query different shapes of data, the different responses that you can get based on what the requirement is for your application. And also the cleaner ability to actually query multiple sources in the same query. So in a single request, you'll now be able to fetch data from one database, one external API, and so on, and get the response for your front-end client. Not to say that it's not available in REST APIs, but I think the model around GraphQL ensures that the user experience around fetching these from different sources or fetching the right amount of data is actually even more clearer with all the self-documenting feature that's available, right? So user experience is generally far better, especially on the front-end side of things with GraphQL, right? So we've seen the benefits of GraphQL, and now we'll look at why GraphQL and how does it fit into the whole ecosystem, right? So, so there's a consumer set of features, like there are different set of apps that are being built, like mobile apps and web apps and microservices, which are there, and the compute is getting easier. So writing business logic is what I think people need to start focusing on, and for that. You need the data access layer, which sits in the middle between your data sources and your consumer. So that data access layer needs to be sorted out, right? And it takes a lot of time to build and iterate on that. And you look at the data sources today. We typically have the databases. You have the internal services talk to each other, microservices, your auth service, or your external APIs like Stripe. Or Salesforce or any payments API and whatnot, right? So databases are getting better. You're getting auto-scaling infrastructure with all these cloud services. You have consumers which are on different platforms. So to bridge the gap between these two producers and consumers, you need a very strong data layer in between, which solves a lot of these use cases in one shot, right? So is it a comparison between GraphQL versus REST? Actually, no, because GraphQL is actually a good complement to what REST APIs are. And let's be honest here, like REST APIs are here to stay for some more time with a lot of existing tooling that's here, and the features that it offers, right? So GraphQL is an incrementally adoptable tool where REST APIs will be there behind a GraphQL wrapper for existing applications. And if you're starting from scratch, you can obviously start off with GraphQL and then build the applications, right? So the reason being the existing tooling with REST APIs are pretty solid, and you don't need to break the workflow. And you can also incrementally adopt GraphQL going forward. So it's always GraphQL and REST, and not like a comparison between two different query languages, right? So today I'm going to talk about how Hasura solves it for building GraphQL APIs, and what kind of philosophy we're trying to look at when you're building applications, and when you want to build applications very fast as well, right? So what has changed fundamentally is Hasura as an architecture basically connects to your different data sources. Data sources could be your database like Postgres, your MySQL, your SQL Server, MongoDB, whatever, and it reads your databases and gives you like a GraphQL API on top of these data models, right? So the fundamental idea is that you have an existing database or you create a database from scratch, and then you connect Hasura to it. It gives you queries, mutations, and subscriptions automatically for you that a client can directly start using it, right? So consuming it on the client will be pretty straightforward once you connect Hasura to the data sources. Hasura also supports creating REST APIs on top of GraphQL. So you have a GraphQL query that you have already created. Now you can create a very perfect REST API query out of it. It could be a GET request or a POST request, depending on what the data fetching logic looks like in terms of passing in the query parameters or variables, right? So the idea is that GraphQL allows you to specify exactly what you want, and you can turn that into a REST API query as well, which can be called from the client through the simple HTTP protocol. So you got the idea that there is a GraphQL API which is being generated out of databases, but that cannot be good enough to actually start consuming it from the client directly, because you're directly accessing a DB. You need some form of authorization that is required at the API layer to prevent access, to prevent malicious access, to prevent abuse and whatnot, right? So we have an authorization layer, which is like a role-based permission system that you can define on your data models, on your GraphQL schema technically, and then Hasura will take care of allowing access to the right rows and columns in your DB based on these rules. So there's a generalized authorization layer that's available across all the data sources that you add to Hasura. We're also adding generalized joins, which is basically to say, if you have like a Postgres database and a MySQL database for different use cases, or like even MongoDB for a different use case, you might want to establish relationships between these multiple data sources. That could be user data in Postgres, and that could be some analytics data in MongoDB. You want to tie these two data together, and your front-end React client probably wants to fetch data from these two sources in a single query, right? So this is possible with generalized joins, where you can establish relationships between these sources. A quick look at how Hasura will fit in a stack. You have the old architecture on the left, where developers typically communicate with the monolith service, which in turn communicates with different microservices or services in your own layer. With Hasura, what has changed is basically the query language is GraphQL. So your front-end client will make a GraphQL query to Hasura with the right authentication tokens and whatnot. And Hasura will basically will have a CQRS style workflow, where it'll make a query to the database for fetching and whatnot, And it will also have like a asynchronous operation where you can perform some stateless logic, custom logic in through events. This could be serverless functions because you're not really dependent on a blocking action on the front end. Right? So a simple example could be that a front end client actually made a request to register a user. So you inserted the user into the DB. Now you want to send a welcome email, but it's not a blocking action on the front end. So you can now put the welcome email in the queue on a serverless function through this event, right? So Hasra can process a database event and then trigger a serverless function on top of that event, right? So this works in a CQRS workflow, and it's pretty interesting on the front end to actually handle it asynchronously and have a good UI also on the front end. On the front end, so typically the workflow would be that your GraphQL queries are made directly to Hasra. So you have your React client or your Angular, whatever front-end library you're using. You directly communicate with Hasra, just a HTTP post request. You send a GraphQL query, and then things start working. Obviously, you will have your authentication layer somewhere else. You can use your own authentication layer, for example, Auth0, Firebase, or your own JWT server that you write, and then authenticate with users, right? So you send the tokens, and then Hasra will take care of generating the SQL for you for the right database, depending on the query, right? So on the client, it's pretty simple. They make a query to Hasra directly, and then they get the data back as JSON. On the client-side tooling, today we have a lot of libraries written specifically for GraphQL, which takes care of caching and also makes the whole consuming real-time subscriptions pretty easily. So that's pretty much what the state of GraphQL is today with client-side tooling. We have a lot of fluent GraphQL clients as well, which lets you write like ORM-like queries as well. So for example, if you want to do object chaining, where you say author dot get of 5 dot limit of 5, and then so you can do chaining, you can do where clauses, you can do order by and whatnot as objects, and then have the ORM style on your front end client as well to make this GraphQL query. There are fluent GraphQL clients which exist today, which helps you do that. There are a few challenges here in terms of how do you manage state on your client now, because previously you used to do a Redux workflow. Your entire state was represented as a Redux state. But now with GraphQL, does GraphQL become your single point of state? Or is just that the data that returned by GraphQL server is just another part of your existing state workflow? And so that's a challenge that needs to be figured out depending on our scale of the application and so on. So let's quickly look at a backend demo. I'm just going to create a project on Hasra Cloud. So I'm going to click on a free tier. I'm going to give WarsawJS. So what we're doing here is we are creating a project which will give us a GraphQL endpoint instantly, right? So once this is initialized, we can land up on the console, which will let us connect to a data source. And then what we'll do is we'll create a table, and then we can quickly start making a query, which can instantly be used on the client. So I'm opening the console here. So what you've done so far is effectively deployed Hasra. It's also available as an open source Docker container. Just for brevity, I'm just using the cloud project. I'm going to hide this for now. So you can see the endpoint over here. I can probably even zoom in a little more. Yeah, so this is the endpoint that you're seeing, which is the GraphQL endpoint. So GraphQL has only one endpoint, which your front-end client consumes. You can make HTTP calls to this particular endpoint to make a GraphQL bit. So what I'm going to do as a next step is I have an endpoint, but I don't have any data source connected, right? So I'm going to create a Postgres database, and I'm going to connect to this particular project. So what you've done is I'm authenticating with Heroku. Heroku has a free Postgres add-on, so I'm just going to make use of that and then just make a table out of this. So we've added data source now. So let's go to the public schema of the Postgres DB. Let's say I create a table called author, which is of ID an integer, and then let's say the author has a name, which is of type text. This is like a typical PHP MyAdmin kind of an interface, which you can use to create tables. I've added a primary key. So it's all pretty much SQL, which is happening in the background. It's just a fancy UI for you to manage it quickly. Right. So what you've done is so far, we've created a table called author. Now, if I go to the API layer, I can see that there's an interface which lets me actually start querying, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do query author ID and name. So if you noticed it here, if you're new to GraphQL, you can see that I actually quickly auto-completed all of these fields one by one, right? So I pressed character, and then I got the list of fields that are possible because of the schema that is being generated, right? And then obviously the response is empty right now because I don't have any data here. So let's do something called a mutation, which lets you insert or update modify data onto your DB. So I'm going to do name. I'm going to pick one from the YouTube stream. Let's say the latest comment was from Piotr. And I'm going to return the ID that's been inserted for this author. So I'm going to insert this mutation. So we've gotten the ID back as 1. So we have a new user who's been inserted. Let's now make the author query again. And now we can see that the ID and name are returned here. So, so what Zhur has done for you effectively is once you've created the data model on your database and pointed Zhur to it, it has created GraphQL APIs instantly to be able to query, mutate, and subscribe to it instantly, right? So we've effectively avoided writing code for these operations, where typically you would have written an endpoint which would have taken a variable which says what is the author query and what is the way to insert data into author table, right? So and this is also pretty much flexible in the way that if I need just the ID, I can just change the query to just say that there's only ID that I require, and the response will be just the ID, right? So this would require a lot of manual work if you're writing your code in a REST API manually, right? So you typically ask for what you want, and then you get exactly what you want in your GraphQL interface. In the background, what's happening is just basically this HTTP call that's going to this endpoint with these headers. From your front-end client, you will typically be making the same HTTP call. Probably the headers might be different. You will obviously not send the secret. You will send the right auth token, or maybe no tokens, just public data from database, and then get the data back on your front client to template whatever state that you have. That's fundamentally what I wanted to show in the demo. There's also more towards this. Like if you want to write your custom logic, if you want to write events on top of this, lots of things to explore over here. But this is a quick demo, a crude demo of what you can get instantly with Zhur without writing any code. Right. Just to continue on the slides. So the databases that we support right now are Postgres, which acts as the metadata layer as well, where when you're saying, I have created this table, I want the APIs for this table, it's basically being stored in a Postgres DB for you. And if it's on Zhur Cloud, that's been taken care automatically. But if you want to self-host, you'll use your Postgres DB for the metadata layer. We also support SQL Server, and MySQL is also in alpha. We support read-only queries right now. We also support BigQuery, so that's public data source, public data sets in BigQuery, which is pretty useful if you are doing data analytics and stuff. You can connect to BigQuery and then start making GraphQL queries and then get data. Coming soon will be Oracle and MongoDB. So the idea is that if you're working in any organization where you're working with multiple databases and multiple sources, all of them can be added to a single Zhur project, and everything can be queried into the same request as well. Also probably establish relationships between these data sources as well. A little bit of just to wrap up on the demo as well. There are challenges for GraphQL itself on the developer side. There are challenges on performance and caching because everything is basically a 200 in GraphQL. Even if it's an error, you get back a 200 network response. And performance is there's an n+1 problem with GraphQL resolving, right? When you're writing an own GraphQL server, you have this problem of for fetching n authors and articles. You will make n+1 kind of query. For each author, you will go through articles as well. Then this loop continues, and there's an n+1 problem in the performance, right? So, and caching, because you don't make a GET request, you typically make a POST request with GraphQL. GET is possible, but then again, there are limits to what you can do with the GET request, with the query parameters and stuff. So caching is a general problem that needs to be solved. And authorization, it's pretty hard to write authorization for a generic GraphQL schema. So whatever API that you see here, there are fields that are being written, the nodes are being written, and then you need to now authorize at a node and a field level generically. On the operation point of side, because it's a single endpoint, if your single endpoint is down, it's a single point of failure, everything is down. There's no one API endpoint which is probably slowing it down. It's your entire server. It's actually a single point of failure. How do you do rate limiting? Previously, you had 10 endpoints in your application. You can rate limit one particular endpoint which is being frequently accessed and whatnot. Now everything is a single endpoint. Now rate limiting has to happen through your post request body. So depending on what is being requested, or just depending on your IP, your user's IP address, or some kind of a unique user ID value or a session variable value that you have. So that's another challenge around rate limiting. On the business side of things, what's the cost involved in adopting GraphQL? So there's an evaluation that needs to be done. How incrementally you can adopt GraphQL, right? The good thing is that you don't need to replace the existing stack to adopt GraphQL. There's always an incremental layer where you just start GraphQL, wrap it over an existing REST API, and then slowly transition towards like a full GraphQL layer for your entire stack, right? This is my last resources slide. I wanted to share the learn and docs of our website, hustle.io/learn, where you can learn about GraphQL in general. So if you're new to GraphQL, we have like an introduction to GraphQL. All the core concepts of GraphQL is being covered. We also have a lot of front-end tutorials. So if you're looking at React, Angular, Next.js, TypeScript, whatever framework, a Vue, we have a GraphQL client plus this framework integration with a GraphQL endpoint. So the server portion is taken care of. You already have a server, so you will now start integrating with your front-end client. So just to check out our Learn tutorials, and feel free to raise issues. It's all open source. You can quickly check out our GitHub repo as well for the tutorials, code, and snippets. That's it from me. I think hope everybody's safe as well over there. It's exciting to have a remote talk on a physical meetup. I wish I was there, but yeah, I hope things get better soon over here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity, folks.
Thank you very much, Praveen. And there are some questions. Maybe the first question from the room and the second question from YouTube, and then we finish because, yeah, time. Is there any question from the room, from here? Okay, so I'm going to read now the question from YouTube. Question about Hasura, or Hasura. What about authorization on the data? Let's say I want a user to see just a subset of the data. Is this possible, or is it public all?
Right. Yeah. So this is totally possible. What we actually do is we define a role, and based on the role, we actually select what the fields are allowed to access. For example, the author table that I created, I can say that I can only access my own author data and not the other person's data, right? So I can specify I can access only my own ID and also specific fields in that table. So you can totally define what permissions you want for each table and for each row as well. So there's a row level and column level permission that is possible with Hasura.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Any other questions? Yeah, one question here.
Hey Praveen, thank you for the talk. I was curious, how does schema migrations work in Hasura?
Yeah, right. So we have a CLI interface which runs the console that you saw on the server on the browser. So the CLI interface lets you create these migration files automatically as you start creating tables. For example, the author table that I created right now, if you had used the Hasura CLI on your file system to create a project, it would have generated a SQL migration file which you can version control over time. And as you keep creating tables and modify data, your database schema migrations are being generated with versions, and you can apply them to another instance. You can replicate the schema on another database, another Hasura project instance, or another database through the CLI. And there's also metadata that you have to take care, which is to say which tables do you want to expose as an API, what is the permission for that API. So those configurations will come under Hasura metadata, and SQL changes will come under migrations, which you keep generating through the CLI interface.
Praveen. So, big applause for you. And could you please also share your slides on our Slack channel or on YouTube, because then we could actually read the links you gave us in the end. So thank you very much. And now let's have the next speaker. So now time for Andriy. Andriy Mykulyak. Andriy Mykulyak about API management.
Thanks, Piotr. Thanks, Piotr. Hello, everyone. I must say it's very unusual for me to be here. I never was here. But okay, let's start. Today, I'd like to talk about API management. In the meeting agenda, it was about API. It was a bit enigmatic, and I'd like to try to explain what's going on. 2 months ago, I did the presentation about designing APIs, and the topic of managing APIs, that is handling basically the whole life cycle of an API until it's retiring, didn't fit into that presentation. So I decided, well, Andriy, let's talk about it in a separate meeting. So now it is. This time has come. Let's suppose you created an API, web API, new shiny. You have version 0.1. You deployed it in production, and you're happy. You celebrate. And what next? Because it's very unusual case that the API will not change. Yeah, if it is a product that will be used, most probably it will have to change to user needs, and then you will usually start to think, oh, okay, how can I introduce these changes? Who in principle can introduce these changes, when, and how we can communicate these changes to our users? Yeah, the more users, the more complicated this communication is. How we can ensure that our API is used as we expect, that no one is breaking the rules, we impose, and how can we be sure that our API works and works in a performant way? So these are usual questions. And to answer these questions, you need a process. Seems that you need a process that is a kind of set of rules that help you to keep these things organized and keep going. And this process is called API management. This is an organization-specific process. There are some basic, commonly agreed best practices, but in most, this process is specific to each organization, and it defines how to create, update, and publish new versions of APIs. How to ensure that, how to look for security, and for analytics, monitoring, and logging. I'd like to talk about each of these areas, that is change management, security, infrastructure, monitoring, and analytics, one by one, with emphasis on the change management. Because I'm a developer, I'm a front-end architect in Fresha. I'm not an expert. I do not count myself as an expert in security and not in DevOps. Therefore, monitoring, statistics, and security, I will talk about these areas quite short. Okay, so here you see a typical life cycle of an API. So it's all everything basically starts with planning. Then you sit and start to code, then test, deploy, and what then? Then usually comes next idea, which gives this cycle of planning, coding, testing, and deploying once and again, until we decide, okay, we have a totally another idea how to do this stuff, how to implement, how to add value to our customers. So we should retire this API. And what usually lifetime of an API is maybe several years. And within these several years, there can be hundreds of updates, hundreds of changes in the API. How can we communicate? How can we distinguish that? How can we find which set of API, which functionality of an API is currently available? So first thing that comes to our mind is versioning. We use versioning practically everywhere. We use versioning for desktop applications, for example, for Git, because to mark our changes, because Git hashes are kind of versions. Can be treated like versions. And when it comes to API, there are two main strategies to handle these changes and to identify these changes. And it depends where we can maintain several independent instances of our API, or we don't want to do this. If we agree and that it's better for our organization to have only one, that is current version of our API in production, and we can evolve it continuously. It's okay. Let's call it a non-version API. It has some pros and cons. I will talk about it 2 minutes. And the other one, when we rather want to mark this, like kind of go in steps. So this was step 1. This was step 2. This functionality is available on step 1, but not on step 2, or vice versa. And this is called versioned API approach. Non-versioned API. For example, we at Fresha use this approach. We deploy for all our internal APIs, and my opinion is for internal APIs it's okay, if we can guarantee the two conditions, that every developer, every team, every development team follows the no breaking changes strategy. What does it mean? That we try to evolve, to make changes in the API, so clients can do not need to break. Yeah. So they work all the time. From time to time, of course, they have to adapt, but before the actual change in the API happens, but not afterwards. And that's why they work. And the second condition is it's almost always a must to be able to closely cooperate with all clients. If it is a private API, clients mean developers, most often front-end developers within your organization. If you know all of them, if you can gather them and say, okay, tomorrow we will introduce this change, it's okay. Yeah, then it's easier to follow this non-versioned approach, because it's only one instance of this API in production. Infrastructure is simpler. Monitoring is simple. Rollback, for example, if something bad happens, you can easily roll back the whole platform to the previous stable version. We at Thrasher use develop REST APIs, but another prominent advocate of this approach is GraphQL. Yeah, they say that okay, it's much better to have one endpoint, do not version it, and just to evolve. When you need something new, to just add it. When you know that no one uses the functionality, just remove it. Yeah, but what if I really want to version my API? Yeah, so this most often it happens for public APIs where you do not even know all your clients. Then in principle you have much more control over what you can put in a new version of an API, but you have also a big more responsibility. Responsibility, I mean that you must in advance inform your clients. Then, hey, once in a quarter or once in a year we will update API. We'll most probably issue a new major version with some breaking changes. It will be available for next year, and within after a year, the old version will stop to work. So you have basically 1 year to adapt. But this, I mean, having more control over when you can retire, when you can introduce new changes. But using versioning APIs, you can maintain separate versions, multiple versions of the API more easily, because you just deploy deploy several versions and route, configure your API gateway so that it routes by path to give it an instance. And because of this, it's easier to support legacy clients. Yeah, because you may have one instance of your API with the old version running somewhere, and all legacy clients, you know that they will hit they will call this instance. Yeah, so it can be made simpler, for example. And again, my opinion is this versioning is almost always a good thing, or is almost always a must for public APIs, because there you do not have control over who your clients are. How to implement versioning? There are basically five approaches to building APIs. That is resource-based, that is REST. Event-based, that is something like WebSockets. Query-based, that is GraphQL. What are two? RPC based. Yeah, that is SOAP and RPC. For most of them, except for example, except maybe query based, the versioning may be implemented, can be implemented in 4 ways: by using version numbers in the URL path, and this is the simplest and the most popular way; by using query string parameters; by using content negotiation feature. I have never seen something like this where the place where it was used, and the heteros linking. That is when you pass actual URLs, the valid URLs to your newest version inside the response body. For me, personally, it's not that important which way you will implement the version in. The most important is the consistency. So it's the user will not be surprised that okay, here it's path based, here it's content negotiation. The more consistency, the better. Now let's come and talk about breaking changes. I mean, most of changes in the API. How to say? They will require our clients to adapt. Otherwise, our client software will break or stop working, unless we made some precautions. Basically, if anything that exists in your API, that is resources, endpoints, media types, queries, mutations in GraphQL, change the semantic, it means that your API introduced a breaking change, and the clients must update. So here are examples of such breaking changes. Basically everything except changing something from being required to being optional and adding new optional things are breaking changes. Therefore, we should think about how we introduce this type of changes, and possibly how we can avoid them. How we introduce and communicate, that's I mean, pretty much standard. We just deploy a new version, a new API version with the major version increased. Yeah. But when it comes to how to avoid these changes, the one general approach is just to make new things, new functionality optional. So when clients knows how to use them, how to use this new functionality, just can pass extra parameter and will get access to it. But by default, the API does not use this new functionality, which that introduced these breaking changes. What helps is maintaining an API schema, possibly coupled with the having API gateway, the third-party software. What also helps is hiding these implementation details and SDKs. So SDK act as a extra layer of indirection that can, because you provide SDKs and you know how this API changed, so you can hide this change in the SDK internals, and clients will not have to update. You can of course define extension points explicitly that, for example, reserved fields that are some bags for future use. You say that this parameter is an object which in the future will be populated with new fields. Yeah, for now it's empty, but in the future we'll add something here. What is also important is that we should not really we shouldn't really encourage our clients to do some strict schema checking, because every change then will be a breaking change. This is also personal opinion, that using enums in Web API, strict enums, is almost always a bad thing, and it gives more problems than it solves. What is also extremely important, from my point of view, is having a set of compatibility tests. So when you would like to introduce a new feature, you can run this feature against this compatibility test set, and then if you have some unwanted break-in change, you will spot them. So when this is all when it comes to change management. And now, very shortly, let's talk about API security. As I said, I do not count myself an expert in security. Therefore, this section will be very, very short. To protect something, you need what to protect, and this means you need to first make an inventory of your APIs. Yeah, there are software API gateways that help with this task. Second, you should architect your APIs with using the principle of least privilege. That is, the services that implement these APIs should have minimum amount of access of permissions, just enough to do they work and not more. Because otherwise, something in the future, maybe something happen that can happen that will make some malicious user be able to exploit these extra privileges and just remove some important part of the database or break into our private network or something like that. Authentication is very important for most APIs. Again, my personal opinion, don't do this by yourselves. Use third-party services because it's much faster and it's much more stable, I would say. Yeah. Almost always HTTPS and TLS encryption is good. And usual probably some trivial stuff is we shouldn't trust anything from the internet. We should sanitize and validate this input. Yeah, every time, no exceptions. And if needed, we should again using the third-party software, probably not inside our applications. We should be able to limit the amount of requests that come from given, for example, from given user. Yeah, this can prevent or at least limit the amount of requests, and that is data which can be extracted by a malicious user. And the last part is login, monitoring, and analytics. Again, this is part which this is area for which there are many good, very good third-party services. So my advice: do not do it by yourself. Use them, integrate with this with existing platforms. In Fresher, we use Datadog and Sentry. Basically, privately, I also used Google Cloud Monitoring and CloudWatch from AWS. But these two, that is Datadog and Sentry, I can wholeheartedly recommend. If you will Google API monitoring, you will find a host of articles of comparisons of existing solutions, free, paid, and so, for basically for any purpose. So when you choose the platform you want to integrate, just do it. Don't do it by yourselves, and then start to monitor and give some. Collect some statistics, and based on these statistics, maybe do some changes for the future. Yeah? Scale, for example, based on the amount of requests for a given endpoint, you can make the decision where you should probably scale this part of the service more or less. Yeah, or you can just decide, okay, this part is not used anymore, so we can just retire it. This is all from my from my side. Thank you. So maybe now it's time for questions.
Thank you very much, Andriy. Andriy is from Fresh House, our sponsor today. So thank you very much also for sponsoring this event. And is there any question? Is there any question from the room? Yes, there is one.
Hello, I have one quick question. Should a versioned API work per whole API or just per one endpoint? So should it be possible to, for example, for one client to work with two versions of API at the same time?
I think usual answer, it depends. It depends how much. If you can guarantee that most of your API will not contain breaking changes, that it's, in my opinion, it's okay to have versions only in one place. That is in one endpoint or a small set of endpoints. But usually this is not the case. I would say.
Okay, so any other questions? I can't see any questions on YouTube. So I have a rhetoric question. How about not using Datadog, but using Sumo Logic for logs?
Very good question. Maybe we can talk about this after workshop, and you will show me what Sumo Logic can do.
Okay.
How it can help.
All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you again.
So now we're going to have the next speaker. So, no, not you, Glafira. Welcome, Glafira. I need to only change the input of slides. Kto chce przerwę? Ręka do góry. Okej. No to po tej prezentacji zrobimy krótko, na niektórych. Okay. But please realize that in a cinema you usually have, 2.5 hours and, no one leaves. Okay, so let's try with the right slides. It's here. Okay. And now I'm not going to do this mistake anymore. Sorry for that, guys. All right, and now it's better.
I'm lucky one. Great. This one. Okay, great. Hi. Excited a lot. Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. It was like an accident, actually. So I'm going to talk about the Angular material accessibility features. This is my first talk in English, so I need some support. Thank you. Thank you. The sound is pretty good. Okay, let's continue. So this is me. My name is Glafira. I am originally from Minsk, Belarus, and now I'm living in Lithuania. I don't know why. Have no idea. I am a front-end team lead and also an accessibility lead. That happens in a nice company called Spur IT. We are doing e-commerce experience for everyone in this world, and our work is based on the famous e-commerce platform called Shopify. And Shopify supports accessibility, like really supports, so we should follow this idea. So that's why I am there, because our clients want accessibility, and they hired me exactly because of this. So let's continue a little bit about me. This is me and my team. I am a kind of a accessibility expert there, so I am trying to involve everyone in this topic, and sometimes too much, too bossy, I would say. Trying to involve everyone, trying to encourage everyone everyone to use the accessibility ideas in their work, like from the manager to the designer, and it works fine actually for me, not for them. A lot of things to learn. Also, I am a big fan of the community idea. I really like to work on some communities projects, and I am the initiator of the first one of the Accessibility Club Minsk. It's the legal branch of the Accessibility Club, original one. There is an original one, just Google it. And yeah, also I am teaching people on the digital accessibility courses. It's actually in Russian, so if you know this language, and if you are really excited about accessibility or want to learn it, so just check the course. It's pretty good. I'm laughing there a lot, with no reason, actually. Also, I am a program committee member of some great meetups in Minsk, like Minsk CSS, Minsk JS, like the brother of this one, I'm pretty sure. And also the conferences, CSS Minsk JS. I just like the brand. Yeah, and the famous Beer.js summit, it's exactly about it, about beer and JS. So it's a great community and great event. Just miss it a lot because of the COVID. Yeah, and I am really proud to say that I am the ambassador of the WTM community. It's Google's initiative, Women Tech Makers. So if this community is providing an information, resources, a scene for women in technologies, we are happy to encourage everyone. So I'm really excited to plan some events with this idea. So if you have any idea, just write me and we'll do something together for women in technologies. So this is the main part of this talk. I am not an Angular developer, like, at all. I don't know Angular. Yeah, one happy man there. Yeah, so I am more like accessibility specialist or like native technology specialist, HTML, CSS, JS. But still, I can teach you something, like if you're into the all this Angular stuff. And yeah, I can check your site for the accessibility, so you'll suffer. The next thing you really should know is this one. Accessibility is a long word, so the community decided to make it shorter. So we now have this abbreviation A11Y. It can came up somewhere in Twitter, and it's not 11T because there were cases. So 11T is a different thing. So yeah, this was the main you need to know. So let's talk about accessibility a little bit. What is it and why you should care about it? But actually, I'm pretty sure you already care about it. When we're talking about accessibility, we mean like everyone. So every people in this room, every people outside, every person outside this room too. So we are going to make our interfaces accessible for everyone. Doesn't matter who has some conditions or something like this. So when we are doing some applications, we think about at least two main things. First, it's people. In the world, people with disabilities is about 15%, and this number doesn't look like big, but in this case, when you see the Earth's population, about 8 billion people, and from them, it's about 1 billion. Numbers are difficult. 1 billion and 176 million people with disabilities, and it's like a lot. You're missing like a huge auditory. And also to this 15% of people, it's not included like some temporary disabilities, like when you have your arm broken or something like this, which affect your interaction with the applications, with the web. So yeah, and also some temporary things like I mean, like not temporary, conditional, like brightness outside or like a low battery in your mouse. So you're going to use keyboard because your mouse is broken, and it's actually a bad idea. Just try some keyboard interaction with your websites. Just open some not Google, Google is accessible, some website like service, public service, I don't know. Yeah, and do like go through it with the keyboard, and it will be a mess. You even won't see where are you. Yeah, so, and the first was the people, and the second one is the legislation. Now our world is growing in this sphere, so almost every country has some accessibility legislation, and it's growing. I won't stay here like for a long time, just check it, and some of them are working now. So for United States, it's almost a requirement to fix sorry the accessibility on your website, to build accessibility for applications. And in Union, oh my god, Europe Union, it's it will be required from to 2025, and in Canada it's now. I work for a project like Canadian project. We are fixing the application, and it's really, I don't know, it's hell. Yeah, so just check it and follow from now. So let me describe a little bit the field of the problems we have now. The first one, I will tell you about the most, the biggest issues for the web, especially because we are talking about Angular. So first thing is like really a huge problem for users with disabilities. It's page structure. What are the issues? First, the page has no unique title, and it's pretty common for the Angular applications because they are single page applications, and we just don't remember to change the title in for our browser. So because it's only one page and we have only one title, but title is the first thing that user hear. So like screen reader users, there are screen readers, they can read everything on the screen. So just a small information for you. Yeah, so it reads your website, and for the blind users, they are a huge helper. So they will read the title first and then the content. And if title is not unique, so the screen reader user has no idea where they are, like they are on the login page or on the main page somewhere, they don't know. So the next one, page lacks H1 heading, or there are three H1 headings. So the problem is that H1 indicates the main content, the start of it. So, and for example, the screen reader users, sorry, screen reader users, they can reach it in 1K. So they can push only HK, and they will find the H1, and they will assume that it's the start of the main content. But yeah, sometimes there is no H1, or for example, it's a logo. So logo is not the main content, and after the logo we have all the navigation. So we need to skip it somehow or do something to go to the main content. The next one is headings should go level by level. We can't miss levels. We can't place, for example, H3 before H2. So yeah, and we should see the heading structure as a document outline. So like in a book, in some documents, we have predefined outline, pretty strict, so it helps us to navigate through the document. The same for the, for example, blind people or people who are navigating with, like, following the visual structure of the headings, like the biggest one, smaller, 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 and so on. So heading structure is really important. The next one, missing landmarks. We have a possibility to structure our document with the landmarks. Landmarks are including main, header, footer. Its name is not footer, it's like content info, like its role is content info. So anyway, the tag is footer. So like this, and landmarks are pretty useful because again, the screen reader user can push only one key to go through all the landmarks. They can reach the navigation, they can reach the main content, the header and the footer in one key. So it's pretty useful for them to have a document structured by these landmarks. Oh, the next one is like, for me, it's the biggest issue of the web. What's going on? We're really missing the keyboard accessibility because we are all like developers. Developers means div, you know. So every component we create, like custom component, we're creating with divs. So divs are not accessible from the keyboard, so it's a bad solution. The main problems for the keyboard users, and actually, you know, keyboard is like, when you are supporting keyboard, you are supporting almost all the types of disability, like blind people, people with tremor, and so on. So it's really useful. So the first one, we can see where the focus is. So this like ugly outline for the interactive controls. Designers just they're asking to like remove it, and we just do it, and it's bad because now there is no outline, and the user can't see where they are. The next one, illogical focus order. It's not that common, but anyway, it's more common now when we have like really brilliant designs. So we are developing something in code like one by one, and then we are changing the order of our elements with styles. And it affects the user who is expecting that the focus will go like one by one, but it will go somehow like in a logical way because we changed the order with styles. The next one, inaccessible controls. That's what I said about divs. When we program everything with divs, these controls are inaccessible with keyboard. And also, there is no possibility to skip navigation. This is not that obvious because for us, like for people who use mouse to navigate the website, it's these like skip links. They called skip links. They are invisible. They will be visible only with the keyboard, and we need to have them because we have sometimes really huge navigation at the top of the page, and we need to skip it somehow, and we have no possibility to do it. And this skip link will move you just to the main content, like when you're clicking it or activating. So we need them, and also filters, for example, in e-commerce. So yeah. And the next one is the keyboard traps. Sometimes I meet it on the websites, like when I'm trying to write some date from the keyboard, and there is a calendar appearing, and I can't go to this calendar with keyboard, and I can't leave this date field. So it's a focus trap. I just can't leave it. So don't know what to do next. Just reload the page, and then again, because I have keyboard still, so I have no possibility to skip this field with keyboard trap. The next one is labels. Labels are pretty useful, but sometimes we lack them because, for example, we do some controls with like icon buttons, so like for toolbars or so on. And these icon buttons, they are like understandable. Okay, this is an edit button or close button or delete button, something like this. But if they have no text inside them, so for the blind user, they are nothing. They are just buttons, and the user doesn't know what to do with them. So yeah, sometimes interactive controls lack labels. The next one, labels are not programmatically discernible. It means that you have the visual label, but it doesn't connect to, it doesn't, yeah, okay. So it's not connected to the field. So we need to connect it. Sometimes screen readers can guess what's the text is this, like it's near the field, so maybe it's a label for a field, but there is only one screen reader for now which can do it. The next one, labels are long and redundant. Sometimes it happens, sometimes. I need to go faster actually. The next one, labels are not unique. It's about like buy now buttons, read more links. When you're a blind person, you can see all the buttons on the list or on the web page, so in one list. So when you see the bunch of the buy now buttons, you have no idea what are they, what are you going to buy. The next one, visually hidden labels. So this one is about when you are smart enough to add your like label to the interactive control with an icon, like for example, to an icon button, a close button or something like this. So you do it through the visually hidden text. And now the screen reader user has the idea what's this button about, but not the sighted user. They and it's pretty common to to add some titles to the buttons, so you can hover on the button and the title will appear. So this will be a kind of a visual label. So, and the color and contrast, it's a battle between designers and programmers, so like every time. The idea is that a lot of designs has poor color contrast, so you just can't understand what's on the screen because, I don't know, because you sleep not so well. Or you are outside and there is a bright sunshine, something like this, so you just can't see anything. So the poor color contrast is a huge problem for you. Also, there are colorblind people who can't understand which color they see. So sometimes we have some issues, like we have numbers, they are growing, so they are green, and they are going down, they are red. So when they are just green and red, the colorblind person won't understand their meanings. They even can't guess because it's the same color for them, for example. So we need to think about these issues. The last one is the color is the only way to convey information. It's sometimes it's a huge issue for some applications. I told you about the previous example with the numbers, so we just need to add some significator to them, like maybe some arrows up and down, and we'll like fix the problem. Color won't be the only way to convey the information. So let's get closer to the Angular, actually, finally. What should we use? Like, that was the small introduction to the accessibility and to accessibility problems for the user. And now we'll try to resolve some of them. And we'll see where to find the resolution for another one. So what we need an Angular material library, UI library. I'm pretty sure there is, for example, a React Angular material. I'm pretty sure it's the same from the accessibility point. They have the same things, so just check it. The next one is HTML, CSS, of course, because we still work with them, even when we are programming in the Angular. The next one is the accessibility standards, WCAG, and the great resource, How to Meet WCAG. It's much more simpler than previous one. And of course, you need the head on your shoulders, but yeah, I won't explain this one. I just pretty sure you already have it, but you need some accessibility ideas in your mind. So, the Angular material. First of all, Angular is pretty accessible now, like Angular material, I mean. They have components, like predefined components, so please check them, please use them, because I know there are lots of developers who are developing their own custom controls, even if they are in these component libraries. So just do it, because they have a lot of things like predefined. For example, the components are using the native elements like inputs, buttons, checkbox is the input too. So yeah, what does it mean? It means that the keyboard accessibility is already included. So you don't need to write tons of JavaScript to provide the keyboard navigation for these controls. The next one, yeah, no, it's an example. I just took this example from the Angular material website to show you that they provide this code sample. You need to copy it and paste, and see here is this input. So everything will be accessible from the keyboard. The next one, built-in accessibility. So the Angular material library is already providing you some behavior, like which they assume as an accessible behavior. So in this example, I copied the input type email code, and there is a label, like error label. So we just provide some information about it during the code, and then it renders. And in the browser, it looks a little bit different, like a lot of additional information. And I just deleted a lot of the information already. So I left only the accessibility related things. So what do we see? We see some unusual area prefixed attributes. And that's how it works. They are already there. So, for example, I did something wrong with this input, and now I have the error label. What do I need? I need to connect this label with the field. So the screen reader, which will go to this field, will read its label, of course, and then after the label, it will read everything which was provided by area described by attribute. So area described by is for description of this input. Without this, the user will know nothing about the error. So, and there are some other area attributes. I won't stay here for long. Just ask me later if you don't understand it. So the next one, Angular material is already providing some best practices, like behavior best practices. It's based on these authoring practices I show you. Here is the link. I will share the slides after. So this is a huge help When you are when you don't know how to code something in accessible way, just go to this service, like a resource, authoring practices, and you'll find the solution. Like there will be code examples, there will be behavior explanation and keyboard navigation and so on. So it's pretty helpful. So for example, we need a dialog. Dialog is actually a modal window, and for to let the screen reader user know that it's a modal window appeared somewhere somehow, they don't know about it when they push the button. So we need to provide some extra information, and it's already in the Angular material. It's time already. I'll be really fast. 5 minutes? Sorry. 2 minutes. Okay. So yeah, there is predefined things in Angular material. Yeah, again, I show you they are rendering there. So, and there are accessibility recommendations for each control, how to use it in accessible way. The next one, really fast. There is a Angular material component dev kit. You already have some predefined things to add to your interfaces. First, the list key manager. When you are building the custom lists, you need to provide some keyboard navigation. So this will help you to do it. Just read about it. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, but just remember about it. You need to add some keyboard navigation, extra keyboard navigation. The focus monitor. I told you about the designers. They always want to delete the focus. So you can do it by understanding which source of the focus was it. For example, if was focused from the keyboard, it's the one style, and from the mouse click, it's another one style. And the Angular provides some classes for it. Also, focus trap. There is a pretty simple directive you can use to trap your focus inside some element. So interactivity checker will help you to understand your element is like disabled, focusable, tabbable, or visible. It's pretty useful too to add some styles to it. Also, live announcer. It helps screen reader users to understand what happened on your web page. For example, some notification appeared, so we need to give them an understanding of it. So we are announcing it like with a screen reader, make it say it out loud. Also, visually hidden class to hide the text we don't need to see, but still need for a screen reader user. And the high contrast mixin, it's nice. In Windows we have this possibility to change the contrast scheme, and sometimes our controls are disappearing because we don't have styles for them. So in Angular you can check it and add some additional styles. For example, borders for buttons. Yeah, please use HTML semantics, like really use it. You still need your structure to be clear. And for CSS, to hide your elements from the accessibility technologies, use display none or visibility hidden in CSS, and also this CDK visually hidden class. Yeah. Use semantics, build a good document outline, use native controls, please, accessibility CDK features, and may the force be with you. No, I won't tell you about it. It's a few slides about the standards, accessibility standards, just check them. And this resource I told you, also some testing tools, like automatically testing, they can test your website. Checklists to get closer to the accessibility. Yeah, thank you. Oh, God. I hope no questions.
So I have a good message. Only one question.
Nice.
We don't
From
have
you?
time for more. From me? Yeah, there is one. However, there was someone faster than me.
Thank you, Glafira.
Yeah.
Спасибо, Glasha.
Thank you.
Great presentation. I have a question. I actually have two questions. One,
As
only
always,
one.
as
Okay.
always.
What's your attitude to the tools which automatically apply the?
Oh no, just don't continue. Yeah, I understood.
If
There are
the-
there are some plugins which are automatically add accessibility to your websites, right?
Yeah, if there a chance that those tools will don't know,
help.
maybe in future, maybe they will become somehow usable, or we
Mhm.
just need to forget about them.
You should forget about them because they change your website code in a predictable way. So sometimes I tested this like famous accessibility plugin. And it's a mess, really. When your site is not prepared, so when you have divs everywhere, like not buttons, it doesn't help. It doesn't change your buttons to buttons. So it doesn't make a lot of things. Doesn't do a lot of things. So just forget about it, please. So yeah, and we'll talk about it later.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Good news, Glafira. That's all. Thank you for your strong opinion, and it was cool. Amazing. And we're going to talk later at the networking session. And now time for deploy, you said? For a break. Who wants a break? Hands up. Okay, let's make a 5-minute break.
1, 2, 3. Okay, it works. Okay, hi WarsawJS. My name is Anton. I work as senior front-end engineer at Sumo Logic. I will tell you a story, approach which we use. Maybe you will find something interesting. I will tell you about our mistakes with it and what we learned from this. I believe that people learn more from mistakes than from success stories. So, working on interactivity performance. First of all, what is this and what the place among other things in web performance? Basically, according to MDN, I trust MDN, we can split it into 5 areas which it covers. First, reducing overall load time. A set of techniques which you may apply to optimize loading, decrease your bundle size, make your site or web application loading faster, and everything goes into this area. Second one, making site usable as soon as possible. When we can have actually loaded site or application quite fast, but it doesn't mean that it's actually interactable. So this is a different story. And we need to ensure that as soon as loaded, it's also interactable. And that covers this area. The third, smoothness and interactivity. We would talk about it much more today. But idea is that when we have loaded application, it's interactable. Our interaction should be fast enough. Our application shouldn't be responsive. We shouldn't have situation when you, I don't know, try to create an account, click on this, everything frozen, nothing happens. And after 5 seconds, oh, account created. Great, but it's not really good performance. So fourth area in web performance is perceived performance. Sometimes we have operation which just simply slow, and we cannot do anything about this. Just think about, I don't know, you need to process 1 terabyte of data. You cannot make it fast in just too big. At least in nowadays, maybe in 20 years when we would have quantum computers, it would be very fast, but not today. And what we can do is actually improve perceived performance. We can use optimistic UI, simply start an action and just leave it in background. And for user, it would feel that it's fast. And basically, that's one approach, or you can show nice spinner with cats and balloons or whatever you like. And yes, there are a lot of techniques which you can do and apply. And 5 area in web performance is performance measurement, because we cannot achieve any great result if we not measure this. We maybe just, I don't know, try to improve, and we never get somewhere because we don't know what we're achieving, where we try to get, what is our result. For this, we need to measure. That's, I believe, cross area for the first previous. So, before we continue, let's remind, I just want to remind you, premature optimization is the root of all evil, almost most of it in programming. Donald Knuth. That's very old quote, I believe, and it's quite important to remember this when you're working on performance or web performance in particular. However, small remarks, that's my personal opinion. It's not Sumo Logic opinion, just present myself here. It doesn't mean that producing an efficient solution is the right way. Because quite often we may be faced with a single choice, how we implement our feature. One is cost a little bit more, takes more time, but it's more efficient. And the second one, we can deliver faster, but performance would be worse. And in general, the better choose the first pass. You need to take care about efficiently, you just shouldn't go crazy about it. So you need to find this balance. It's very hard actually to achieve, easy to say. So when we should start working on our optimization, then if that's, we need to find the balance. So first of all, the path begin. What is this? First of all, you need to get some confirmation that you have performance issue. You can get the client feedback. It's not nice. Usually it's your client calling you in the night or in whatever time and saying your web application doesn't work. It's very slow, laggy, and a lot of other interesting words. And it's not very pleasant. And if it's in the night, it creates extra stress. There is other way to get the feedback. It's internal testing. For example, your quality assurance or quality engineers may do testing and notice, hey, this feature is slow and we can rise. So that's another way of doing this. For example, at Sumo Logic, we follow in dog fooding. It means that we are using our product and we actually have more feedback from our developers. They contribute to us and we know upfront what's going on. Is it bad? Is it good? This really, really helps. I'm not sure that it can work for everyone because some people may be working on, I don't know, medical software and, I don't know, specialized on heart issues, and not everyone have heart issues, fortunately, so they cannot test this on their own, and hopefully they wouldn't. So yeah, idea is we need a human confirmation. However, if we think about this, it's a very reactive approach, right? We just keep it go till someone came to us and say, hey, it's slow. The alternative is to do monitoring via APM solution. There are plenty of this. Again, we at Sumo Logic providing tracing for the front end. Basically, you can get information that, for example, some click operation is slow on your web application or site. There are plenty of other solutions. Just want to say you that it's alternative to getting confirmation from people. You can get insight from monitoring tools, and you should use them. This is very helpful. So, okay, Houston, we have a problem. We get out of memory, for example. Everything dead. What we should do? First of all, before starting to fix it, the first question we should ask ourselves, what is exactly slow? Is it, I don't know, when you receive feedback, up is slow. It doesn't tell us anything, right? What we can optimize? We don't know. We don't know on what look. So we need to understand first what exactly is slow, what the area is broken, what the component is slow or unperformant or unresponsive. And the next question is it slow for everyone? Maybe it's not. Maybe just some people from, I don't know, let's say Spain, and we have third-party plugin which for Spain load extra code and it's slow for them, but the rest of the world doesn't have this problem. It's important in the future for us to understand how to address this issue. And of course, we need to ask what the browser or operation system user has, because it drastically can impact performance and how application behave. Different browser has different optimization internally. Next question, is there any specific condition when performance issue occur? For example, you have, I don't know, situation you try to show on a UI 1 million of rows in the table. And the business requirement is to show everything. And 1 million of rows in the case of 0.001% of all users. So the question, should we work on this or not? Is it really the case we want to somehow handle? And one small question which we should ask ourselves, maybe we pushed something recently, or maybe there's a new feature, change, whatever, which actually led to degradation performance. So, before we kick off, relating to those questions, check if this issue needs to be fixed. Again, maybe it's just not the case. You have one user who has 1 million rows of data which you want to show in UI, and maybe you shouldn't waste your time on fixing this. Or maybe you have a functionality, close your account, which not performing well. But on other case, ask yourself, do you want to have close account performant well? Do you want people live in your system or not? Maybe it's not a bad idea to have it unperformant. Of course, I'm joking here, but the reason is why here is you need to actually try to understand if it's really need to be fixed. Not all performance issues need to be fixed. So, yeah, maybe it's not even, shouldn't be supported. Or maybe we have a feature which is underperform or has some performance degradation, but it's on deprecation plan, we were gonna remove it. So please ignore it, remove it, forget it, live happy life. Don't waste your time on optimizing this. So if all your answer on those questions are no, you have a real issue, then we come to measurement. As I mentioned at the very beginning, you cannot fix anything if you're not measuring anything. At Sumo Logic, we basically rely on two kind of measurement. Real user monitoring, basically it's some script, measurement scripts which we execute on real browser and just track how performant this or other flow. Again, we use our solution for APM general, but sometimes they're very complex flow. You cannot just, you know, measure click on a button and how much JavaScript or CSS rendering or whatever takes, because it's way more complex. You do some API call, you get response, maybe you do one more API call, and each of these lead to some changes in UI. You actually want to capture all this flow, how bad or how good is this? And we have this in real user monitoring, and we also using synthetic monitoring. We're using this when we identify the issue, we know there is a problem, we can actually build a test script which just measure this issue or the flow, and then we just add it to our automation test. And this helps us to prevent degradation in the future. This also helps us to understand how good or how bad we perform in those known scenarios. So it's basically become part of normal automation. And each of these has own challenges. I will talk more about this. Room challenges. As I mentioned, we use this for complex scenarios, and we discovered that in complex scenarios there may be more even complex problem. Example, you have a click on a button, it starts loading data, but there are several requests, and it takes time, user get tired, and start new action. And there are more JavaScript gonna be executed in the same time, and you would get metric which just skewed and does not present the reality, how this operation works, but you just got the result which was slowed down by other user interaction. And unfortunately that happens. We try to somehow prevent this known problems. However, not everything can be captured, and 95 percentile is your friend, which help to throw away data which, let's say, not gonna happen in reality. Another case, user may change the browser tab. And, well, that's very simple scenario. Who did this? Like, site, slow, it's not getting new result, you try to get data, and you, for example, switch your tab to CNBC or CNN or Bloomberg or whatever. Please raise the hand, who did this? I do this all the time. Yes, yes, thank you. However, when you do this, browser do a little bit different thing. It says, okay, this tab is not priority, so let's decrease the priority, and it will affect your set timeouts, it will affect your request animation frames, and if you use it, and if you rely on this, you get extremely skewed data. And this is again a problem. However, this can be captured via JavaScript API, and we just basically detect changing the tab and then throw away this measurement because we know that it's gonna be bad. And user may have plugins. I believe everyone loves plugins. I don't know, I have so many issues just about logic, business logic about the plugins which they created. But with performance, it's maybe even worse, because they may inject some JavaScript which is gonna be executed in the moment when you're not expecting, but plugin expected. And you have a slow system. And again, remember our question, we need to understand who has the issue in what condition. If it's plugin, well, probably we cannot fix all plugins out there because there's so many people building them, but we need to understand what we are working. So, synthetic monitoring. I will tell you a story. As I, on the very, very beginning said, I will share our mistakes. Hopefully you will learn. So how we try to implement those synthetic monitorings? We use Protractor for our end-to-end tests. Disclaimer, we started before Protractor get to deprecation plan. It was way before this. But the idea is that it actually gives a nice scenario. We have as a user our Protractor script, which sends an interaction to our browser driver, which executes some action in the browser. And we can do measurement like real user. At least that was our plan, right? That's a known Selenium architecture which is behind Protractor. And everything was great. Like, yeah, we have some communication between Selenium client, browser driver, and browser, but it's not so bad, right? However, when we started to run this on Jenkins, we actually discovered that we have Selenium grid, about which we fortunately forget. And it's completely different story. We have one machine which sends requests to another machine, which is Selenium grid. And this one gonna send to the node, and inside node it will receive browser driver and then go to the browser. And our estimate showed that on our setup, we had a 1 second mistake for a very simple operation, which on synthetic monitoring measurements is very, very big. And we try to achieve some measurements on level 100 milliseconds. And guess what? With such scenario, you never get such values. So lessons learned, please, if you try to do something like this, test on the real environment where you're going to execute those tests, because you may not be surprised. And yeah, just test and ensure that it works as you think, because it may be not. So, okay, now we have measurement, we know what we are doing, we know what we are testing, how we can address the issue. The most common is profiling, right? What we can do about this? Basically, there are several types of profiling. Two very popular known approach, top-down. What it means, when we try to profile some operation, we get this flame chart. And example, you have a React application on operation, there are like a lot of React components logic invoked, and you get flame like here, a lot of nested calls, one smaller than another, and it's usually very long. So if you have something like this, just use top-down approach, go from the top to the down and try to find what you can optimize, because from bottom to down, it can be problematic in such scenarios. However, if you have something like this, where in the bottom you can see particular big calls, you can start using bottom-up approach, which work well in such scenario. And for us, it helped a lot as well. We use both. And I like outline something. Again, that's my personal one. I called it side down. Why I talk about this? JavaScript, it's asynchronous, right? And quite often we have complex operation which may require some set timeout or something, or request animation frame or whatever. And actually, it's not look like this. We may have 3 small tasks in our profile, like you see here, 24 milliseconds. It's not big, right? That's a very small one. But as it is part of one complex flow, it actually total takes 600 milliseconds. Your first look on this will tell you, like top down, bottom up, you usually look on the one single task. Well, it's good, it works well. But just a reminder, it's an asynchronous environment. You need to take a look at all what you have as well. I just called it side down. Please don't call it like this. I wanted to outline somehow. So after we did profiling, what we may find, I will share what the common issues we found in our product. I believe we are not the lonely here. A lot of people finding the same issues. Relayout repaint. I don't know, so many people talk about it, so many articles written about this. There are several sources of those relayout repaint issues. Basically, when browser need to do extra rendering or a flow, most common case, you change some CSS class and then you try to get offset height or something like this and force layout, repaint. However, maybe in general problems like we had SVG with 1,000 elements, and however we just CSS, nothing fancy. We just add fill opacity for all elements except one, so it basically gives you a fade effect. Nice. But when you do this in SVG on 1,000 elements, it's gonna be slow and it's gonna be laggy. And that's nothing you can optimize with JavaScript. So if you have something like this, there are popular approach which used in different libraries, basically called two-layer architecture. I believe you may have more layers in reality. Idea is, okay, we know that our DOM manipulation is slow. We want to change the appearance. So what we do, we create an extra layer. Very, very simple. If we want to fade out, so we basically need a rectangle, right, which has the color, which use an RGBA with background color of our SVG and some opacity. And we get a fade effect for everything, and it's extremely fast. We just need to draw again the element which shouldn't be faded. This works well. This is used in a lot of chart libraries when you have a lot of elements rendered as well, and you want to, for example, tooltip be shown, or I don't know, some fancy hover effect. Usually they just have separate canvas, or in SVG separate layer. We just show something hovered. They not changing original. That it gives better performance. So next thing with which we faced, I believe all JavaScript developers love functional programming, or at least at some part. Everyone use map, reduce, and it's nice. But what if we iterate in, let's say, at least 10 megabyte objects in a browser? Maybe 1 million records, and we have some functional programming approach. We're allocating a lot of memory, temporal memory, but still, it actually gets worse on the performance, and functional programming on hot loops should be avoided at all cost. And imperative programming is your old, not fancy, but really helpful friend, which can solve this problem. There are also like known problem with this memory allocation. Almost all JavaScript garbage collector use, and not only JavaScript, using one heuristic is new object die soon, and all object lives for a very long time. And basically they split garbage collector cycle to major and minor, something like this. And with such functional programming, you allocate a lot of object, and you have hot loop. It takes time. Your memory pressure getting higher. And what browser, or better to say JavaScript engine, would do? Of course, it start to remove those objects because you have them too much. And well, they knew they will die faster. It's more optimized. But still, if you have 10 minor garbage collector cycle in one hot loop, it may decrease performance drastically. And we had such issues, and we had a lot of actually such issues. Of course, not optimized algorithm. Everyone knows complexity, I believe. That's everyone can face. And that's something you can find with profiling, the most common situation. And just, I cannot give any common approach because it's very specific. Like, not every algorithm can be optimized from ON in square to ON, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's something you need to take care of in your low-performance code, if you have one. Performance operation which is not needed now, the keyword now. Quite often we have something like, again, it may be React, it can be Angular. We build a lot of components, nested structure, and instead of, for example, use an if which will prevent rendering subtree, we may just add display none to some div. Great, it wouldn't be rendered in the browser. However, our React components or Angular components of Vue.js, whatever you're using, it's still gonna be rendered, and it will take time. And again, if you have more like some arrays which lead to complex component structure, that may be a big problem. That's something you need to avoid if you can, if you're not needed something right now. We will talk about this in next slides, what approaches can be applied. And of course, no caching for computative intensive flow. Basically, that's very popular issue. Caching is everything when you try to deal with performance. So, optimizing not needed operation. Avoid doing any rendering for things that not visible now. As I said, please, better to not render whole components instead of just visually hide, because it takes time. Or maybe you have some component which need to appear. I need to wrap up. Which you don't need now after click operation, so just don't render this. And here the thing which we can use is lazy rendering. That's popular when you have scrollable area, I don't know, 200 heavy panels, you just show what you have. However, this leads to scroll degradation, which again, we talked about interactivity performance. It creates, again, problem when you scroll and it's become laggy. So the question to everyone here, does anyone know what we can do to fix this scroll degradation? Does anyone know? Suham? Pagination. Well, that can be applied. Price for this young guy. Who was this? Oh? Anya will give you a prize. Yeah, but there is also alternative technique can be applied, that one of these, and alternative is multi-stage rendering. What is this multi-stage rendering? Basically, we say, okay, we render visible part, but we're not rendering right now the rest. So we request idle callback when the browser would have time, and we start rendering the rest part. We actually can split it in multiple stages, not just two. That's why it's called multi-stage. And basically, we rendering when we can the rest of UI, because user get the screen, user see what user wanted to get, and you in the background renders the rest, not freezing anything. But again, it cannot be applied everywhere. It has its limitation. So yeah, also wanted to talk a little bit about cache issues. The most common solution is just to use memorize from Lodash or whatever. However, the problem with memorize is that if you have web application which lives long, for example, you create a trading platform. How trading platform function? People open trading platform at, okay, probably here it would be 9 AM when the exchange opening and closing at 17:30, and they during this time changing different trading views or whatever, but your application need to leave all this time and it should function. It's not just trading platform, and just give it as example. And if you have such memorize and change your view all the time and it get memorized, and memory pressure getting high, you actually have a memory leak due to this memorize. That's a big problem if you have a long-living web application. The safer way is to use LRU. How LRU works? LRU basically, remember, recently used calls, and you just limit. You say, not to memorize everything, but memorize, let's say, 100 calls. That's fine. And the rest we can invoke it again. That would work well. However, if you were very attentive, there is one problem with LRU cache and garbage collector. Who knows what the problem is? Again, anyone? What was the heuristic for garbage collectors? And why LRU breaks this? It breaks it. Okay, no one. As I said, new object dies soon. With LRU, actually, you change this heuristic, because newly created object not gonna die soon. It's gonna stick there, and it will lead there in bigger garbage collection cycles. and it actually may slow down your system. Again, it all depends. Please check what you have. It all really depends on your case and what you have. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed, and maybe you have some questions. Or we don't have time for questions.
Yes, I apologize, but the time is now for the next presentation. So sorry for that, Anton. Thank you very much for your presentation, and also Daniel will get the prize, one of them. And there were any other guys or girls? Okay. All right. Awesome. All right. So thank you very much. Great applause. And now time for Piotr about JavaScript and Museum. Let's switch now. Stop cam. No.
Do we need to switch the computers for the videos?
That's a good question. For the videos, yes, they will be played from here, but then you will say and they will play
Can we
here. Chyba mi zablokował to. Dobra, wiesz co, rzucę może, bo strzelałem sobie z tego, z... Czekaj. Tak, stąd. Czekaj, to mi wrzuciłeś. Okay, one moment. 1 minute of downloading.
Mogę pendrive'a wziąć?
Nie, no już 105 sekund. Musiałem przypadkiem to wziąć.
I can start. Even now. Hi guys. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It's really it's been a tough year and a half. I'm a conference organizer myself, and not being able to participate in live meetings like this was a tough experience. So I'm really happy that WarsawJS is coming back. My conference, by example, decided not to do it this year. Maybe we'll change decision next year. We'll see. My guess is that most of you are working with large-scale apps, high-profile projects, commonly creating web applications, mobile applications, generally corporate stuff. that is kind of typical to our industry, JavaScript development, web development these days. And I wanted to show you a few two cases when we created interactive installations in the museum, in the Warsaw Rising Museum, that visitors to the museum can interact with. They enter the museum. They have some interaction with, and probably that's not the situation and not the project that you would consider web tech stack is suitable for. Maybe you will not see JavaScript and HTML or at first glance when I will show you the projects or the installations. Probably with my with this introduction you will see it there, but I guess that not many people do. I want to. These are kind of success stories on the contrasting to what Anton just said. That it's better to learn from mistakes. I hope you will find this kind of interesting or inspiring, that you can use this tech stack in slightly different scenario. I wanted to start with a video that presents the first installation, and then I'll just discuss or tell you more about the stack. Can I ask for the playback? One big part that's kind of nice about these projects is that we are, besides delivering the design, the project, the technology, we are also responsible for the concepts and ideas for both of these installations. Should I start it, or are they handling that for? Okay, so please start video 1. But we have decided, working with the historians in the museum, we have decided to, or they decided to pick just a few days, like 15 or 17 days, the key moments, the key milestones of the pricing. Okay, can we switch back? So you saw that. No, the second video. But can we switch back to the previous computer? I was expecting that Piotr, you are having a Mac, and I'm having a Mac, and I'll send you a keynote, so it will just work without any issues. But yeah, we had to stick to. The. I think I'm not seeing this architecture over. Okay, so let's get back to old good Windows machines. So okay, this is the architecture overview. What you have seen is basically the installation consists of two web apps that are running on the bottom here. We have a controller app and a display app. They are both web apps that are communicating with each other through Node. Controller app is connected. They are both working or deployed on the same PC. We have considered having a separate boxes for those. We were looking into performance, but we found out that just one PC is enough, even though it's both connected in the same moment. It's connected both to a 4K projector and a touch screen. But the controller app is displaying the front end on the touch screen and display app on the projector. Okay, so that's kind of simple. Kind of simple technology here, and the main technology we use to make it work is NWJS. Does anyone here have any experience with Node NWJS? And do you have any experience with Electron? Yeah, so okay, I want to talk you to compare those two later. So we used NWJS, which basically wraps Chromium and Node and makes an executable out of that. So we can just run it on a PC or a Mac, just like any other program, and it runs full screen, handles the execution of the application without any problems. For the main part of the animation that you saw, we are using GSAP library, the GreenSock animation platform, which we are using a lot with websites, for websites and for these kind of installations. And probably that's the most complex part of this project, because the whole animation that you saw, so glimpses of, is pretty complex. There's kind of a lot going on, and GSAP helps us with creating the code in kind of a manageable way, so that we can understand it and change it with the designers, with the historians as well, throughout the project, and then come up with the final situation. I'm mentioning SVGs here because the infographics that is being animated is kind of complex SVG. It probably has tens of thousands of nodes, and it has different layers for different days of the animation, and all the layers are structured in a very similar way, and it's kind of complex, and we had to learn how to handle this complexity so that our designers can work with. So I'm mentioning here is what were the challenges of the project, and point two, SVGs. I started talking about it. We came with a process. So the issue was that we had different layers for different days, and they were having similar objects, and there were collision of IDs, and we had to develop a process of handling this kind of large file, so that the designer can work on the file in the Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and then commit it to Git, and then we had kind of automatic pipeline so that it was deployed to our test environment, and the designer could more or less by herself see or test the changes of the SVGs, which were a huge part of the implementation itself. The other challenge we had with this project was surprising for me. When we were doing the final mounting in the museum, we mounted. It was a challenge to mount the projector, and at first, even to choose the projector with correct focal length, so that the displayed image would fit the table with the 3D model of the city. At least more or less fit the table. But when we had such a projector, it was a hell to calibrate it, because we were able to both maneuver or change the position of the projector with in all three dimensions, and then we were also it was also possible to move the table around and rotate the table. And it was a hell to set it up so that it didn't have any distortions. And actually we learned that we really need an arm, and a projector arm with a micro adjustments, and we didn't. So it was just a tiny bit of a modification on top, resulted in like 3, 5, 10 centimeters of change of the image on the table. But then at the end, when we finally managed to more or less fit the image with the table, with our this test image with the grid, it turned out that there's 1 or 2 millimeter differences when we focused on the actual model of the city, where it had modeled the streets and the river. That it was visible enough. These distortions were visible enough, so we had to have another phase of micro adjustments of the both the satellite, or maybe not satellite, maybe yeah, I don't remember whether it was a satellite image of the city. So it would have to be from these days. So maybe it was just a plain photo of the city from the 1934. And we had to distort it in Photoshop and then adjust the positions of the of all the elements in the SVGs. And then final thing I want to mention here, just the whole installation had to start up every day and shut down during the night. And we managed starting up of these NWJS applications. It was pretty simple. Because they were executables, so we managed this with Windows Scheduler. But then it was kind of an issue to start up, automatically start up the projector. And what we actually did was use the web app, admin web app of the projector that was available over the Ethernet, that allowed a user, like a human user, to use a browser to to manage the projector, for example, to start it up. But we didn't have an operator there in the museum during every morning, so we screen scrapped the HTTP commands that the browser was sending when a user was operating that, and we used a terminal script with curl commands to simulate the actual user starting up the projector using the web app. Okay, so that's the first thing, and for the second year, we kind of decided to top up the game, and we worked on another idea of ourselves. That's called reflection. In the beginning, it was called sibling. The idea was that we could use the huge library of photographs from the epoch and try to use AI to find a sibling of a visitor, of a user of a website, similar to someone from one of the insurgents that is similar to you. Actually, reflection is a mirror. Actually, there are two mirrors, one behind the other. The mirror is actually an interactive mirror. It has a webcam. It has a screen behind the mirror, so we can use it both for we can both use it as a mirror and as a screen. And for this installation, actually the architecture is even simpler. And again, it's what visitors see is actually a web app as well. The mirror app is actually a website with some specific API calls, but basically it's a simple web page. Sorry, not even web app. It's just a web page with a few API calls, and it's running in a container that was provided by the producer of this interactive mirror. We actually, for this project, we created a dedicated, bespoke design of the mirror, but the technology is similar and they are using it in different places. And the mirror app is connecting or sending requests with images of the visitors to the AI app, which is actually called, which is developer coded in Python. I will get back to that in a second. And then the AI app sends back the response, which is the ID of an insurgent that we want to present the image of. The mirror has two specific pieces of equipment that I wanted to mention. One is the webcam, and the other one is the distance sensor. So we can measure, or our application has information or receives events from the container, which tells the information holding, or events holding an information how what's the distance from the viewer to the mirror itself. Actually, key technologies used here are as even simpler than before, because we are using again GSAP for seamless animations between the different stages of the interface of the applications. We are using Axios for these calls, and then RxJS for managing events regarding the distance that I mentioned, which were produced sometimes even a few times a second, so we didn't want to be overflown with the events. So so we used RxJS for that. The AI application is a large topic and probably would require a whole separate presentation on Python.js maybe. But what I wanted to mention is that the first prototype of the application that we created had this part also coded in a Node, so it would be probably possible to code that with fully with JavaScript, or maybe the JavaScript would be a kind of a wrapper for the Python TensorFlow implementation, which is probably better, or at least was 2 years ago. There were quite a lot of challenges with this project. I wanted to mention these connected to the interface, to the web application. One is lighting. So there are two sides of the story with lighting. The more light we have, the better the mirror effect works, because it reflects the external light. And on top of that, the better images from the webcam we get. And we wanted to get pretty decent images, so that the Python AI implementation could recognize the features of the face and then analyze that. But the flip side of that, or the other side of the coin, is that the more light we have, the worse we can see the screen that is behind the mirror. So setting the light up required a lot of different trial and error effort. To add the light, remove light, move it to another position, change the direction. It was a hell. Then the webcam position is kind of having the AI part of the webcam positioning created the only algorithmical problem in this project. So we decided we couldn't have a webcam in front of the viewer, because in front of the viewer we have a screen behind the mirror. So we decided to have it, we could either have it on the side or on top or on the bottom. We decided to have it on both to suit both tall people and kids. But having a webcam on the side meant that we are making the pictures of the visitors just side profile, slightly from the side. It was better when they moved slightly backward and worse if they were closer, but still it was a problem with this position. So what we created was a kind of a design decision that we put elements of the interface in different places, and they were appearing and disappearing during the kind of preliminary introduction animation. And the moment that we were making the photo, all the interface elements was appearing close to the camera, so the users slightly moved their head towards the camera, so that made the trick. And the other thing that the other consequence of having a camera, actually in any place, was that the issue that we had to solve was to find height of the visitor, so that we could just using our screen, we could show the image of the insurgent in the place, so we had to get the coordinates of the place where the visitor sees their reflection of their face. And that varies, so this position varies whether someone is tall or small. So we had some algorithm that, so we had to combine, I won't get into the details about that, but we analyzed, the only thing that we had to analyze was the image from the webcam. And yeah, we just trial and error, we decided to, or we found out the correlation between the position of the face on the image from the webcam and the correct position that we had to show the image on the screen behind the mirror. Later I can tell you more about it during the networking session. And wrapping up, hopefully that was kind of interesting for you or surprising to see that these kinds of things, these kind of projects are possible with web tech stack. I want to wrap it up with things that make, from my point of view as a developer, that make it different, or these kind of projects are different. So one is that these projects are very tight on schedule. So they are 1, 2, maybe 3 months long projects, and they end when they end. We don't support this. We don't support, and which is maybe even more important, we don't create new versions of these kind of applications. And this means that from the software craftsman in myself cries. So there's a lot of dirty tricks, but yeah, it doesn't matter. So just I would like to refactor, but it's not very important. And then the other thing of the story is that I had some parts of my career working on corporate systems for telcos and for banks, and doing these kind of projects, I think that, or I feel that these have serve some better public or common purpose. So you get both in the same time. You don't get as much, well, craftsmanship as you had, but there are some other benefits. Thank you. Hopefully that was kind of interesting.
For the presentation, and there is time for only one question, last question. So if you can answer, but
again?
No questions. Okay, no questions. So we have time. So thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. Sorry for that. We will have now a competition, a contest provided by Prisma, right? Yes. So you're welcome to come here, and then very short 2 lightning talks as an alternative. So. Can you? Sorry, I wasn't sure if it's our moment. Ah, right, sorry. Okay. Turning on.
All right. So can we get the slides?
directly from here. HDMI. Let's switch.
Hola. Hola. Oh, am I screaming to the mic? I have no experience with mics whatsoever. If I'm shouting, if I'm mumbling, please give me a holla. Our Prezi is not showing up. That is bad luck, Emily. Hey, maybe this part doesn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe we can try from the other side.
No, it's working, but it's not mirroring, you know?
Okay.
Display.
Yeah, but I need to present with sliders.
Yeah,
It's very important.
yes.
Alrighty.
Okay. With this?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh shit.
Oh shit. He said that.
Okay, so maybe präsentieren.
No, it
Kein
has
präsentieren?
nein, kein präsentieren bitte. Es muss präsent with Slido sein.
Wirklich?
Okay, guys. So
No, bitte.
so the thing is that we prepared a quiz, right? It would be super fun if it worked. So it's like one of these things that you scan the QR code, then you answer on your phone, and then stuff appears on the screen. So really exciting. And I would really like for it to work. This is why present with Slido is so important.
Kann ich nicht. Einen Moment.
Okay, well then, why? Voice from the audience. What was that?
No, I
Mirror the screen.
Okay, mirror this. I mirror this. Unfortunately.
Oh no, my notes are visible. I feel so exposed. Oh no. How embarrassing. Cool beans. Thank you. Okay, cool. Yes, I'm Natalia. This is my colleague Emily, and we came here from Berlin to tell you about Prisma. That's the startup where we work. We want to tell you what Prisma does, what its mission is, and how it can make your life better. And we have prepared something fun. I already said a couple of words about it, just like that. There's going to be a quiz that I introduced a little bit already. And the prizes, so there's a couple of prizes, right? The third runner-up is getting a t-shirt. We have a good selection of Prisma t-shirts. Yeah, there's my colleagues over there. They're wearing one design. I have another one. Emily here is sporting another one. There's another secret one. So, you know, there's something to play for. And there's another prize also, and that is the ticket to the React.js workshop that these folks from WarsawJS are organizing. That's happening, 22nd, I think, of August. So also super cool. And the main prize, the ticket to TSConf 21. That's in September, I think September 10th. So yes, this is what's happening if you win the quiz. And how do you take part in the quiz? Here comes the fun part. Please scan the QR code, or if you just so happen to not be able to do so, you can also do that in the browser. So, you know, many options to do that. And we're gonna have like a little test run before we do the serious stuff. It's working already. What a miracle! Cool. So, which one of you? Okay. So, which one of these statements is true to you? You can like choose a couple. Yeah. So, all right. I'm seeing that many of you haven't heard of Prisma before. You know what? We went to Budapest last week. Also like for a visit to a meetup. And really many folks haven't heard of Prisma. By the end of our visit, that changed, of course. But in Budapest, there was about, I think, 62% of the attendees. So, oh yeah, look, we're getting to the same number here. Is it a trend? Could be a trend. Cool. So now that you know how to use the whole shebang with the quiz, now you know how to do it. We're moving on, and Emily is gonna speak some truths about Prisma. Oh, and you gotta like do the button.
Yes. All right, so Prisma is an open source ORM for Node and TypeScript. As a developer, it can make your life a lot easier by facilitating how you access data from the database. So typically in application development, interacting with databases and particularly relational databases is a huge bottleneck. So Prisma kind of gets around this problem by providing a type-safe API that returns plain JavaScript objects for you. So currently we support MySQL, Postgres, SQL Server, Mongo, and SQLite. So Prisma is a whole tool chain, but our main products are Prisma Client, Prisma Migrate, and Prisma Studio. So Prisma Client is this type-safe API that you use to run queries against your database with. Prisma Migrate is a database migration tool, which makes updating your database when your schema changes a breeze. And Prisma Studio is a modern database graphical user interface. So at the heart of Prisma is the Prisma schema file, which kind of unifies the application models with your database. So what are the benefits of using Prisma? Well, higher developer productivity and increased confidence. So using a tool like Migrate, for example, you no longer have to manually write out database migrations in SQL, which is awesome. And you can move very fast. And using a tool like Prisma Client, you have a type-safe API, which allows you to discover which models, fields, and operations are available to you before runtime. So this is what a typical Prisma query looks like. This code is fetching post records from the database. It's only taking records where the publish field is set to true, and it's skipping the first 10, so it's only taking records 11 to 20, and it is returning, it's ordering the return by the title alphabetically. So this looks really awesome, and it is, but I think the beauty of Prisma really is apparent when you're writing this out, because you'll get autocomplete, and you'll be able to see what models, fields, and operations are valid at compile time. So this is super awesome. And that's it. But one last thing is that Prisma is like technology agnostic in the sense that it works with any API. So it works with a GraphQL API, a REST API, and an API using like gRPC. So that's great.
Thank you. Well done. Hey, so I am now realizing that I got nervous before and I forgot to tell you. So the questions, of course, will be relating to what Emily said. So you should have listened carefully. I hope you did, even though I didn't mention that. But yeah, look how cool is that? Like your names are popping up on the screen. You know, I love this stuff. We usually use it online. It's also fun, but it's just so much nicer to see the faces kind of attached to these pretty conventional names. When we were in Budapest, people were using like some like really crazy nicknames like Zord662, or it was difficult already. We don't have much time, I know about that. Piotr is like looking on, so we're gonna go ahead with that. 50 people, you're in for a treat. Which database does Prisma not support? And yeah, hurry up with that. Is it SQL Server, Amazon Redshift, MySQL, or PostgreSQL? What could that be? And look, there in the corner, we can see how many people replied already, so turbo good. I'm gonna wait until 50. Come on, 50%, you know we can do it. Yeah, gotcha. All right, majority of you said Amazon Redshift, and you were right. Bravo. Moving on, what visual tool does Prisma offer for interacting with data in your database? Is it Migrate, Studio, Client, or is it the Prismatron? It could be, I mean, who knows? I don't know. Waiting. Oh my God, I'm nervous, you know. I'm waiting until 50 again. There we go. Majority of you said Studio, and like a pretty strong client streak as well. Studio was right. Does Prisma support relational or non-relational databases? Only relational, only non-relational, or is that both? What do you think? Look how well it's going, no? It makes me happy, this number growing. The magical 50, we surpassed that. It is both. Whoop, I heard like a little whoop. Like that. What is Prisma Migrate? Is it a type-safe database client? Is it a tool for keeping your database in sync with your schema? Or is it a GUI for interacting with your data? Only 3 options, so you know, like, you have a better chances of guessing even if you didn't listen. Got to the 50. Went for the second option. You were right. Everybody listened very carefully, no? It seems. Coolio, Tomasz, you are the winner. All right. God. Yeah, would Tomasz, see you already? Michał Drzazga and Hrmod. Would you come up to me? Hrmod. Hrmod? I'm not sure. Would you all come up to me later and I will sort you out with your prizes? Yeah, thank you very much. No, wait, sorry, I'm not done. Cool. So yeah, we want to invite you for breakfast tomorrow, basically. At 9 we will be at Krem. This is on Jana Jędrzeja Śnieneckich 18. You can come to us, chat to us about databases or your dogs if you are so inclined, and the breakfast is on us. So good offer, I think. Okay, now I am definitely done. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Natalia, very much for this presentation and this contest. So let's wrap up. Okay, so there is still something I would like to present. Something went wrong. Can you help me, because I'm not very here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Containing a truck, not. This is a bus or a truck? Okay. There will be a jet-based license for that. Okay, sorry, no streaming. No streaming. What I can show you is are the last slides, and I wanted to say, yeah, we're going to have a workshop, a WarsawJS workshop on React on multiple levels of knowledge for many, and yeah, it's on Sunday, as Natalia said, and yeah, the tickets are now are available for being bought, and yeah, they cost like 61 zloty, so it's quite a good price for 5 hours of training with, for example, Piotr Szlachciak. Where is Piotr? Not here now. And Jarek and Michał Bury, they are very good trainers. So yeah, that's your breakfast tomorrow. And yeah, and that's actually everything. There's also a lightning talk. We have RX for yeah, it's here. I had it in it up. So Jurek Woźniak, now your turn. However, if you're very hungry, the pizza is there, so you can switch, you can split. Sorry for that, but I know that there are guys very, very hungry for that.
Okay, so how many of you recognize this logo? Okay, how many of you use this technology? Okay, and who honestly likes it? Okay, this is the RxJS logo. I'd like to make you curious about RxJS, show you what it's capable of, and how to make the first step. RxJS is able to do many things. However, in my opinion, its biggest advantage is that it allows to implement fairly complex asynchronous code in a fairly simple way. For example, this code shows autocomplete suggestions, and looking from the top, it reacts to the query input changes, debounces the events, reacts only if the query is at least 3 characters long, sends HTTP request to the server with the query, and on top of that, the switch map operator at the end takes care of possible race conditions, so we will receive only the autocomplete suggestions for the latest query only. As you can see, we have a clear flow of what happens from top to bottom in just a few lines of code. This is what RxJS is capable of. Let's now go back to the basics and see how to make the first step. To start with, let's see how we react to the values in RxJS. We have some source emitting the values, and the values might be spread in time. So let's draw a timeline. And now let's imagine that we enter some local grocery store and start looking around, and we might find a lemon, for example. We react to it by, for example, putting it into our shopping basket if it was on our shopping list. And if we would go on and see other products, our reaction would happen independently for each one of them. This is how we react to the values in the incoming values in RxJS, one by one. Okay, let's now familiarize ourselves with three key RxJS concepts. First is the observable. This is our source which will be emitting the values. And to create a new observable, you can use the new observable constructor and pass a function to it. And this function is the logic which will be emitting the values. And in our case, the logic is very simple. Once it's executed, we will instantly emit two values, Alice and Ben. The observable on its own doesn't do anything. It just describes the way the values will be emitted. Right now, we need to somehow describe how do we want to react to each emitted value. For that, we can define our observer. And in case of this code, we will simply console log each emitted value. At this stage, we have the observable, which just describes the logic, how will the values be emitted. And we also have the observer describing how do we want to react to each emitted value. Right now, we need to somehow execute this logic placed inside of our observable and pass our observer to it. To do so, we need the third element, which is the subscription. A subscription is an execution of the observable, and each observable exposes the subscribe method to which we can pass our observer. And this new statement below will actually execute the code placed inside of the observable above with the observer passed to it. And every subscriber next statement inside of this logic will actually call next on the observer, which in effect will console log the value. I know it sounds like over-engineering, but trust me, this interface enables really great things. The observables can get quite complex and even connect to databases or use sockets. Simplifying what we have on the screen right now, the observable is like a function which can return multiple values, also asynchronously. The subscription is like a call to this function, and the observer is our callback describing how do we want to react to each emitted value. In real-life situations, there are many shortcuts, helper functions, and operators available in RxJS, so instead of using the new observable constructor, our code will look more like what we can see over here. More next time. I'm Jurek Woźniak. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much, Jurek.
Thank you.
No questions?
No questions. Okay, I hope we'll talk later there.
Yes. Okay, so to wrap up, I will remind you about Confront.js that will happen in December. We already know that's going to be either 10th or 11th of December. Of course, if we're very lucky and there's not going to be the pandemics. So it's, like 50-50% of chance, not much. Wait, one moment. I refresh. No, not here. No, my slides. Yeah, okay, so I didn't deploy them. One moment. Yeah, here's the not deployed version that we have also most of the speakers for the next meetup, and it's always, as always, on the not 8th September. Yeah, it was 8th September. It's good. It's the second Wednesday of each month. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. That's all for today.